Alrighty, welcome to episode 264. I can't believe we've done that many of these already. I had a great time at the Greenport skate park yesterday. Definitely check out episode 263 when you get a chance. A little bit of a lighter topic. Um, they're great episode. Got to meet a lot of great people. They're trying to save their skate park from getting closed down or falling into complete disrepair. But in a more serious note, we do have the possible return of COVID lockdowns. So I have two news articles here. One's an opinion piece by from the Guardian, put out by a doctor from England, and then this is the fear mongering report from CNN, Central News Network, or Common. I don't know what the fuck it even means. Anyway, basically, here's the preface of what's been going on and how I got alerted to this. So I saw something on Twitter the other day, and it was from Alex Jones's show. That it wasn't even from his show, actually. It was someone that watched the show talking about it, and he was like, "Yo, I heard on his show that a TSA agent leaked the plan for COVID lockdowns to return in the fall," and I was like, "Really? Like, this is interesting." So I did more digging on it. And basically, the guy is a TSA agent. He said, yeah, in September, they're going to bring back masks on airplanes. And then, like, the first week of September. And then by the end of October, we'll be in full lockdown again, just like we were in 2020. And that obviously freaked me the fuck out because, flashbacks to that period of time in my life. And it was horrible. Um, so I did more digging. And then as the, like, 2-3 days after that, as I'm doing more of this research, I noticed that more newspapers were coming out. And one of the first newspapers that came out with it was The Atlantic. And they said a college in Atlanta, and the name is in this article, I think, decided to return to masking and social distancing. They didn't go back to online schooling, but they definitely went back to masking. I think it's in the CNN one here. Hold on one second. Let's see here. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But basically, there's two viruses of concern, two variants of concern. There's E. What the hell is it? E something. EG5, and then there's also the BA. The BA something. The BA 283 or whatever. And that one's concerning because it's mutated over 30 times in such a short amount of time. Now, the thing is about mutations, they become more infectious but less deadly. That's how viruses work. So, obviously, yeah, I understand monitoring the COVID variants to make sure they're not going to be more lethal, but scientifically, that just doesn't happen. Now, regardless of what you think about COVID-19, whether you think it's a Chinese lab virus that was accidentally or purposely leaked or a result of climate change or just the every 100-year catastrophe of a pandemic, this is, no matter what you think of it, it is concerning. But I will say that it's also a fear that this is being used for control, because a lot of critics of the Biden administration have said that it's a means to suppress the vote for any Republican in 2024 because they see how unpopular Joe Biden is. For example, when he visited Hawaii, a very blue state, everyone was chanting "fuck you" at Joe Biden because of his poor response time to the devastation in Maui. So let's get into some of these documents, right? Regardless of what you think about how this is going to go out, let's read some of these documents and figure out what the proper course of action is and what we should be thinking. So the Omicron. So this is from Dr. What was it? Professor Devi Sridhar, who is the chair of Global Public Health at the University of Edinburgh. So she said that the Omicron subvariant EG.5, which the WHO has classified as a variant of interest, has caused concern among those whose memories of recent winters haven't faded. The World Health Organization notes the risk posed to public health remains low. There's no indication of increased severity of infection or an increased hospitalization rate with this new strain. So this was put out a few days after the lockdowns in that Georgia campus and some urgings by a few doctors around the country, and some other businesses in the country that are urging a return to masking. So the World Health Organization is not concerned about this. For those of you that believe the World Health Organization, cool your jets. For those of you that don't, I'm sure you have some way of spinning this, or you have some information, and I'm sure I'm going to end up probably believing it because you guys have been right the last year and a half. Pretty crazy. I can't believe I'm saying that. So this lady also said that COVID-19 in 2023 is not COVID-19 in 2020. The hospital admissions for disease in England in late July were 1.97 people per 100,000 people, compared to the 36 per 100,000 in January 2021. And she credits, effective and safe vaccines, and for this, as well as mixing vaccination and previous infection. Personally, I got all 3 of my shots, but I got freaked out a few months after the 3rd one because I was seeing a lot of young people get cardiac arrest, die, and it was just like, okay, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't get any more boosters. Let's just wait to see this out. There was in the news, there was admittance that there was a spike in increases in heart disease and cardiovascular problems in people that did get the shot. There's also been a lot of news articles getting put out saying, "Oh, if you have heart problems, it could be because you're exercising too much." It's like there's no such thing as exercising too much. That I've never heard. Like, unless you're not eating properly, sleeping properly, or drinking enough water, there's no such thing as too much exercise. It's fucking insane. So it's a little sus. So I mean, I got a EKG scan. The guy said I was good. All right, took my fish oil for a while, and fortunately I'm alive, but there's no real there's no real definitive answer whether or not these things are bad or not for you. I mean, there are a lot of concerning news articles, but it's still kind of concerning. So I personally don't want to get any more vaccines, and that's why I'm a little wary of a vaccine mandate, because it's like, okay, well now we have this evidence that this potential evidence here that this vaccine's causing problems. There's even been admittance to that, especially with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So what are we doing here? Not that I don't think they don't work. They definitely help expose your immune system to get ready when it encounters the virus. But I don't really think that, I don't know. I'm just not sure what the healthy option is at this point, because now since the heart attacks have been going up since COVID, since these vaccines, I don't know. It's kind of scary, especially in young people. But anyway, so she's again advocating get vaccinated, get treated if infected, and use masks to help reduce transmission. But then she's also saying that it's really not a cause of concern. So that should be the end of it. There's no cause of concern. For managing this variant, and others remains the same. Okay. But there's no cause of concern. So, at individual level, sure, but I don't think there's a need to do this at a governmental level. Only people over the age of 65 are eligible to receive a COVID vaccine in Britain. Not really applicable to us, but still interesting to look at. And at least she admits this. There's always a level of risk involved in living life, and just being level-headed when new subvariants emerge and mutate in the coming weeks and months. In the coming weeks and months. So how do you know that, though? That's the thing. That's what's very interesting about this. How do you know they're going to be mutating in the coming weeks and months? They've always been mutating, right? So what's the deal here? I also thought, too, as the virus kept evolving and got less lethal and more infectious, it would have less subvariants. I thought that's the science, too. She did say we're in a phase of management. So then in that sense, there's really this is a cautious optimistic take, but I don't really think that this is something that, I don't really think that governments or businesses or institutions should be making rules already based off of something the international community isn't really freaking out about, and most Americans aren't freaking out about. About 82% of Americans actually don't give a shit, according to Axios and No, not 82%. That's the percent of people that haven't taken a COVID test. Excuse me. We'll get to the people that don't really care in a minute. Oh yeah, COVID-19 was at the bottom of Americans' list of key public health threats, according to the latest Axios Ipsos American Health Index poll. So most of us don't care anymore, and most of us don't want to go back to that because that was horrible, and we lost years off our lives in that. A lot of trauma at that point. And then we get to the fear mongering of CNN. So they're saying that high risk groups, and this is interesting. So the high risk groups are pretty normal. It's people with HIV, immunocompromised conditions, heart disease, stroke, dementia, lung disease, organ and stem cell transplants, liver problems, kidney problems, cancer, diabetes. But then it gets weird. Then they say mental health issues. Now, this is the $1,000,000 question. How the fuck does having anxiety make you more susceptible to getting COVID-19? How does having depression make you more susceptible to getting COVID-19? How does any mental health issues, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, how does that make me, not saying I have those, but I'm just saying, like, how does that make me more susceptible if I was to have these things? How? I can understand everything else on the list, but mental health, like, that's just trying to cast a wide net onto my generation because we are highly diagnosed with mental illness or identify without diagnosis with mental illness in my generation. So why this, I feel, is to try to get people my age to carry the torch again and push forward all of these restrictions that we saw during the COVID-19 era in 2019 to 2022. It was a very concerning era. Being in that time was terrifying for me. I just wanted people to wear the mask and get vaccinated, and then, not realizing that it was, also for a form of control as well. It just got to the point where it was like, okay, there's like a nuanced take, but even if you had like mild criticisms, like for me, I always like, after I freak out a little bit, I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's like a nuance to this. Like, yeah, the government's definitely using this and overreaching, because I remember when New York, got rid of its mask mandate, re-implemented it, got rid of it, and then re-implemented it, and then got rid of it. And that caused a lot of anger. And then I was more on the side of, all right, you know what? I understand the whole, backlash to it, because it was confusing and it was just used to jerk people around. And I can also see how it was used, with changing public opinion and, trying to isolate people more, which keeps working people divided and keeps people from interacting with each other. Therefore, causing a lot of social problems down the line, drug addiction, suicide, social and civil unrest. I mean, what we saw in 2020 was because everyone was bored at home, not because they actually cared about George Floyd, or maybe it was because they actually had time to think for once. But that ended up getting co-opted and being used to send Biden straight to the top. So they co-opted a popular social movement. You can hear all about that in the episode 100s, where I talked about that with several key organizers during the George Floyd era. Anyway, back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. So, little Eminem reference. The CDC, right, Center for Disease Control, they say the agency doesn't make a broad recommendation that everyone adopt masks. They do recommend universal masking in jurisdictions that have 20 or more people with COVID per 100,000 in local hospitals, and masking for high-risk individuals when 10 to 19.9 people per 100,000 are hospitalized from the virus. So it just said the agency doesn't make broad recommendation for everyone to adopt masks, but if hospitalizations reach critical levels. Now, these numbers that I referenced are for the whole country, the entirety of the United States. And it says 20 or more people with COVID per 100,000 in local hospitals. That's really not a lot. I could see if it was like 50 or 60, but 20 is not really that bad. I really don't want to see another mask mandate. I'm going to be very honest with you. I really don't want to see another lockdown, especially because it's just mentally taxing. I'm going to be very honest with you. And it doesn't really make sense how a virus can keep. The whole point of a virus is not necessarily to kill an individual, but to be highly infectious. So, as long as it's highly infectious and just infects and infects and infects, I can't see how one could be more deadly than the other compared to the original COVID. You understand? I can see, like, maybe, the new variant being like 5% deadlier than, the old variant that we've been dealing with, the EA whatever, but I can't see being as deadly or deadlier than the original COVID-19 variant. So right now, there's about 4 new hospital admissions for every 100,000 people this week at the end of August. I'm sorry, for the week ending in August 12th throughout the country. No counties had high levels of COVID-19 hospitalizations except 85 counties, or 3% of the country. Were in the medium threshold, and about a quarter of those counties were in Florida. So this is the funny thing about Florida, right? Like, Florida, okay. Ron DeSantis, as we know, is running in 2024. Florida was touted during the COVID era. Is like, look, we have about the same amount of cases as New York and California, yet we're a smaller state, and we have, no restrictions. Disney World's open. We don't care. And I feel like they're trying to make DeSantis look like an asshole. I'm not a DeSantis guy. I've ripped him a new asshole on this show before, but I'm just calling it as it is. Florida had 700,000 more cases than New York during that COVID period, but that's no restrictions. With no restrictions versus New York's many restrictions. So instead of 6.7 million cases in New York, Florida had 7.3 or 7.4 million cases in Florida. So while that is, for Florida, it's a little more at a percentage base, it's relatively the same number and with no restrictions, which is quite impressive. Now, Florida is actually getting bigger than New York. I don't think it has the same amount of people. Actually, let's do a quick Google because I might be sounding like a complete asshole right now. Florida population 2020, because that's when the census came out. 21.73. Oh, I'm wrong. Florida is actually bigger. New York population 2020. No, that can't be. New York State. 19.34 million. So Florida actually is 2 million more people. So we actually they had more. It's actually at the same proportion. We are proportionally at the same amount of COVID cases percentage-wise. And they had no restrictions, and we had all the restrictions in the world. We had people leaving and quitting jobs because they didn't want to get a COVID vaccine. We had people, getting, fined and arrested over incidences over not getting masks, not wanting to wear a mask or get a vaccine. Yet Florida had nothing, and they had, on a percentage base, the same amount. Now, do I think that masking does not work completely? No, I think it works, but I just don't think that, like, in the grand scheme of things, that it really makes, I don't really think it makes sense for a long-term solution, because you're having people, you're allowing people at bars and restaurants and shit, and you're allowing them to take their mask off when they eat in the restaurant. So it's just like, and all that bullshit with the, if you sit in your designated table, COVID can't get you. Like, what? Get the fuck out of here. Just the filter thing in all the restaurants and all the bars and all the venues and stuff, that it makes sense. I get a good HEPA filter. It cleans the air. But dog, if we're at the point where you could sit in a classroom, you could sit in a room together, you can go to a dining, go to a bar, get rid of the fucking masks. Because at that point, just keep everything closed down. And if nothing can close down, then, we're fine. I also think that, so this is another thing to look out to, too. Back to that TSA whistleblower. So again, this was in mid-August, the guy blew it to Alex Jones. And he said, flights and public settings is going to have a slow return to masks, and then by October, full lockdowns. So this came out, this article I'm reading right now came out a week and a half after. So these papers have come out. I've been trying to look for the original documents. It's been very difficult to find. But keep my words in mind. The first week of September, there's going to be mask mandates. And by October, there's going to be lockdowns. If everything in this paper, if everything from Alex Jones goes correct, which honestly, dog, the right wing conspiracy theorists, they've been right about a lot of shit. I'm going to be so honest about you. They've been right about a lot of shit. I don't know if they're right about the lizard people, but a lot of the questions they're asking and a lot of the, hey, look, they're covering this up, they've been right about that. I ain't going to hold you. As much as it hurts to admit that the freaking frogs are turning gay is correct, I don't know. So then this new variant, BA2.86, so it's detected in a small number of people globally, is the variant of concern. And they're very concerned that because the virus in wastewater toilets in the United States has doubled. And this is reported by Dr. Robert Wachter, who's the professor and chair of the Department of Medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. He says hospitalizations have not yet doubled, but I think they probably will, as the numbers lag a couple of weeks behind. So usually 2 to 3 weeks, right? Now, this article came out on the 23rd. Okay, so this article came out on the 23rd. We have, again, right, September. So anywhere from like the first week to the second week, maybe even the third week of September, we're going to start seeing we could possibly see a lot of freak out, according to this guy. So here's the thing. Alex Jones and his TSA whistleblower said in a couple of weeks, we're going to see a return to masking, and by October, a return to lockdowns. This doctor is confirming the same thing by saying that, saying, hey, the wastewater is double here. The wastewater is double here, and they are going to, we're going to possibly see more lethal infections and deaths from this new COVID variant. So that's what this guy is saying in the CNN article. The fact that this educated man and Alex Jones are on the same page is fucking insane. But dog, if that happens, it's going to kill businesses. That's going to kill small businesses. It's going to kill workers. And it's going to kill not just workers, it's going to kill their jobs on top of them probably. It's going to destroy our economy again. We're going to be sent into chaos. And, they're going to go right back to lockdowns. Whereas with the Florida model and the Texas model, in a percentage basis, no lockdowns ended up being the same as having all the lockdowns in the world. I personally don't think people are going to allow this to happen again because everyone's mental health went down the fucking toilet in 2021 and 2019 and 2020. And I think after COVID, everyone kind of realized, being a COVID radical was fucking stupid. And I mean, there's some people that are going to surprise me, and I'm sure they will, but I genuinely think that there's got to be a better way than cutting off all human contact, which they actually admit is bad in this fucking article. They wrote down something where it said, they said, who was this? Bode, right? So this person is Dr. Sarah Bode, and she is the medical director at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. And she said, we learned from the pandemic that kids need to be in school. It's really important for their social and emotional health. No shit. I mean, obviously it is. It was important for my health, and I'm a grown-ass man. I was in fucking college. I was studying for a degree, and it was important for my health to be around people. That's why there was but instead, you punish people for wanting to go be people. It's insane. It's insane. And it's not going to happen again. And all these kids, there's a difference. I've talked to people that have young children or, have young children as family members, and they notice a marked difference between, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds that were born, a little before COVID, so they got to socialize a bit, and then COVID happened, and then those born during COVID and came out as 3, 4, 5, and 6, when COVID ended. And the difference between those two kids is radically different. They're much shyer, much more withdrawn, much more aloof. And I even saw it in, college freshmen and sophomores and stuff, when I went to visit college and when I was in college, when I went to visit my alma mater, rather. And, the difference between, the kids that went to college during COVID and spend their last year or two in the post-COVID era versus, kids in my generation or, the kids graduated before, it's markedly different. So this dominant EG5, it's the dominant variant. It might not have been it might not have driven the recent acceleration by itself. They may be somewhat resistant to immunity by current vaccines and boosters. So this is now the push for more vaccines and boosters. So this person is what the hell is this? The person that's saying this is Dr. Robert Wachter, back to Wachter. In addition, most people haven't gotten a booster in a while, so the collective immunity is lower than it was 6 months ago. The virus sees that and sees most faces and noses and mouths are uncovered and unprotected, so it takes advantage of that opportunity. Again, no one's addressing the long-standing thing that was touted during the COVID era. No one was addressing the fact that as viruses mutate, they get less deadly. As viruses mutate, they get less deadly. So why is this all of a sudden a concern again? Yes, people don't really get the flu vaccine. I think the flu vaccine's at like 46% or something like that. No one really gets the flu vaccine. There's people that get it. I get my flu shot every year, but because when I got the flu in college a couple of times and it was really bad, so I was like, fuck it, I'm getting the flu vaccine. But there's people that get the flu vaccine, but it's not like 75% of the country. It's like in the 40s, and we don't really see flu ripping people apart, killing people. Influenza B or whatever the fuck it was in 1919 killed a bunch of people. And influenza's been around 100 years and no one really cares. That's going to happen with COVID too. They said COVID's going to be around forever. We're just going to have to deal with it. All right, and the flu had to be around forever and we just fucking deal with it. So what's all the fear-mongering about? So there's a new booster coming this fall that will target a family of Omicron subvariants called XBB and is expected to be delivered to provide against newer versions. So scientists are not sure how significant BA 2.86 will be, which is the variant of concern. And some institutions are already reacting to the rise in COVID. So Morris Brown College, that's the college I was telling you about in Atlanta, Georgia, announced a return to mandated physical distancing and masks just 1 week after classes started in August. If I was a student there, I would drop out of there. I would transfer. There is no fucking shot I would ever deal with that shit. Bro, you go through high school, you're fucking all masked up and shit, and then it's like, you got to go back to it. I would lose my fucking mind. I would lose my fucking mind. I actually wanted to see if I can interview one of the kids that goes there, and just get some perspective to see what it's like on the ground. Like, what's the student reaction to all of this? Because that's bullshit. I'm going to be honest with you. I'd be so fucking pissed. I'd be so pissed. I wouldn't even know what to do with myself. And this is what's even more fucked up, though. So they're implementing a return to masking and physical distance, right? And then we have this physician, right? This pediatrician, Sarah Bode. We're getting back to Sarah Bode. And she said a vast majority of kids have mild or no symptoms when they're infected by COVID-19 symptoms. COVID-19 infection, whatever the fuck. So you just said that kids, right? And I know college-age students are not children. We're adults. They're adults. I almost said we. I'm not in college anymore. They're adults. But they're still very young. 18 to 24. You can see a pediatrician until you're 21. Okay? You can see a pediatrician until you're 21 in the United States. So biologically, you're still considered a kid, I guess, in the pediatric world. So a vast majority of kids, including college kids, have no or mild symptoms, said Dr. Sarah Bode, who's, again, the medical director of school-based health and mobile clinics at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. Yet, you have colleges and institutions that are putting these restrictions on people that experience no to mild symptoms, essentially ruining their lives. So now Dr. Bode, who also chairs the American Academy of Pediatrics Council on School Health, said the majority of students do not need to wear masks and should instead use traditional prevention such as hand washing, coughing into their elbow, and staying home when sick. So again, this college is overreacting or doing it for political points. I would definitely highlight and encourage people to make that change and not go back to virtual learning. We learned from the pandemic that kids need to be in school. It's really important for their social and emotional health. And I will say again, no shit. Now, if this was published during the COVID era, CNN would lynch this person and ruin their career. So are Americans in the mood for masks? This is important too. So despite, concern among experts in some institutions, Americans don't appear to be worried enough about the recent rise in cases. Again, Axios and Ipsos, the American Health Poll, said most Americans do not care. And 82% haven't taken a home COVID test in the past week, which how are you even able to know who's taking a home COVID test when you can't really report a home COVID test? I mean, some of them have QR codes, but how do you even fucking know? How do you know? Seriously, how do you know that 82% of Americans are not taking home COVID tests? Do you ask them? Do you survey them? There's no reference to that. There's like no, this is a journalist. There's no reference to a study for that number, unless it was in the Axios poll. And then it was just poorly written. So I honestly, my thoughts at the end of this, right? Oh, I wrote fear mongering on the back of the CNN article. My feeling on all of this and my from my analysis. Now, in 2019, when COVID was a thing, on February 1st, it was being feared about, and in March, it did its thing. I was running my radio show in SUNY Oneonta, WONY 90.9 FM. And I said, COVID-19, or maybe I think I even said it on this podcast too. COVID-19 is a joke. It's going to be just like Ebola, whatever. No one cares. And boy, how I was wrong. Now, I am again, I'm making this episode after this fact, after I realized I made the biggest fucking horrible prediction of my life, saying that it wasn't going to be a thing. I don't have a prediction, but what I see is that there is an attempt at fear-mongering. The 2024 election is coming around. I'm inclined to agree with the Republicans in the sense that, this is going to be used as a means to try and suppress the vote, discourage people from voting, increase mail-in ballots. Now I'm not a whole mail-in ballot conspiracy guy, but I do think that there is election fraud in this country. I do think that there's, especially in our own New York governor's race, I think that there was definitely some fuckery with that. What I will say is that, I like the mail-in ballot thing. That was disproven by multiple federal judges across the political spectrum, but I still think that COVID-19 did do something to, that crisis was taken advantage of to try and pollute the vote and try to get Biden into office. I think if COVID wasn't a thing, Trump would have won, or we would have seen a Trump-Bernie matchup, and it would have been a very close victory down to a coin flip between the two gentlemen. So COVID-19 back then really suppressed a lot of popular revolt, a lot of progress that could have been made, a lot of reform that could have been made. Some people blame it on the Chinese. Some people, and I'm included, I believe both cases, but I believe that, the United States government released it. That's just me. I kind of think that the U.S. government may have released the thing, or at least allowed it to spread, so that way there could be a shutdown, and that way the popular dissent against the system can be channeled and more accurately controlled because everyone's at home tweeting and texting, so the government could watch and listen instead of how it was before, where it's harder to keep people in line. I think this is more of a control thing, but I'm not necessarily sure how much this is going to pop off. There's been many such instances where, COVID was going to pop off and then it didn't. Where COVID was going to pop off and then it didn't. I guess the only thing I'm going to say is we're going to have to just wait and see. I hope that it's all just kind of a joke, that we don't have to go to lockdowns. But, it's looking like that fear-mongering campaign is going to kick up again. And I wouldn't be surprised if the number went from a majority of Americans do not believe in lockdowns and 82% haven't taken a home test, to by October saying 55% of Americans support lockdowns and COVID testing and vaccines. Wouldn't be surprised. So I don't know what you guys think, but if you do have an opinion on this, let me know in the comments and at the bottom of this YouTube video, or if you're listening on an audio platform, leave a review, or comment on Facebook or Instagram at Backpacking America. Anyway, thank you again for listening to episode 263 of Backpacking America. Let's hope that this doesn't happen again. I do not intend on complying with the mask mandate or the vaccine mandate this time around. I do not want to go back. Honestly, we can't go back. It was just too devastating for everyone's health and physically, mentally, and with people's relationships and such. Anyway, episode 263 of Backpack America. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one, and until next time.